For here, I'd like to welcome the Minister of the House. Obviously, we've concerns, serious concerns about the property tax legislation as it's being brought in the format it's been brought in, because, as we know, it's a tax, not an income or shows ability to pay. As some describe it, it's a tax on debt. It is, as we've said many a time, the wrong plan at the wrong time because of so many people being in mortgage difficulties. And to bring in a property tax that doesn't have any correlation with people's actual income is going to put more and more people who are in mortgage difficulty into deeper and deeper trouble. And I think that's essentially our point, and has been our point all along, that in order to bring in a property tax, you need first of all to look at the mortgage crisis in the country, a situation where 30% of mortgages are either in arrears or have been restructured by the banks, which shows you the depth of the crisis. But what it doesn't show is how much worse it's going to get, because of the fact that we have the lowest central bank rate in Europe at the moment, with the ECB rate below 1%, and we have so many, 180,000 people on tracker mortgages. Tracker mortgages were introduced by the banks between 2004 and 2007, and that's when most of them were taken out, and that's when the highest prices were paid. So they're the people in the biggest negative equity, have the biggest loans out, and they're on tracker mortgages. They're lucky to be on tracker mortgages at the moment, because, as we see, the banks have free rein and have not been able to be controlled by the governments, this or the previous government, when it came to raising interest rates on those who weren't on tracker mortgages. But what is going to happen, and a certainty, is as the European Central Bank rate goes up over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, then all those people who are on tracker mortgages will become part of the group who are going to be in arrears, going to be in difficulty, going to need restructuring. So we are taking money from people on the universal social charge and cutting public sector pay, more tax and more cuts, and people, when their mortgage bill comes in, as the European Central Bank rate goes up, then we're going to have a bigger mortgage problem. And I've said it before in this House, Minister, that the guy who has told us that we need to solve our mortgage problem was none other than Bill Clinton. He said that at the Irish Global Economic Forum, the second anniversary of which is coming up this year in November. And to a real extent, we haven't actually tackled that problem at all, because we have brought in the legislation in relation to debt and debtors, and yet we know that that is only going to account for a few thousand people per annum. That doesn't take care of the hundreds of thousands of people who find themselves in mortgage difficulties. And we have this property tax, and I used to be an auctioneer, I'm still an auctioneer, to be sending out estimated valuations on properties is going to lead to widespread confusion. I am confused, and maybe the Minister could maybe clarify this at the amendment stage, is we read reports in the papers, and it still hasn't been clarified, is if somebody honestly puts in a figure of, 180,000, they pay the 180,000, that's what they believe it is, and then they sell the house in 5, 10 years' time, and somebody from the revenue decides, actually, you undervalued it in May 2013. We think you undervalued it by 50,000 back then, and with penalties, you owe us, tens of thousands of euros. Just if we could get clarification. The reason I asked for clarification is I've read different accounts in the papers as to what actually happens on those cases. And also in relation to the farming sector, I've asked the farming bodies, did they get clarification from the revenue? And apparently they have, on what happens when it comes to farmhouses which are adjacent to farm buildings. So when you're adjacent to a farm building, as a valuer, I'm well aware you cannot sell a farmhouse without selling the farm buildings. What we are told by the revenue commissioners is that you value the farmhouse an acre and buildings, but I believe farm buildings are to be excluded. What that would mean is that any farmhouse that is adjoining stated units or any of the we'll say commercial element of their farm would literally be worth less than 100,000, because nobody will buy a farmhouse unless they have control of the adjoining sheds around it. So automatically the government are, by virtue of the valuations method that the revenue are talking about, ensuring that every farmer will pay under the 100,000, and I just wanted to get clarification on that issue as well. There are so many anomalies, and I suppose the biggest issue which was raised over in the committee stages in the Dáil was the ability to pay clause. I know that there are deferrals, those thresholds aren't particularly high. Deferral, of course, means you're only, to use that famous terminology, kicking the can down the road. But we have seen debt forgiveness for the guys who are the multi-millionaires, billionaires. And here we have all these mortgage holders struggling to pay their mortgage. We put a property tax on it, we keep cutting child benefit, we keep cutting the income of Gardaí, and that's of serious concern. And we've seen cases, and I'm sure colleagues opposite would be aware of Gardaí, who are finding it difficult to pay their mortgages. If a Garda is taken to court for inability to pay, he loses his job, because your Garda can't be declared bankrupt and still retain his job. So, you know, we have not tackled the core issue, and if the mortgage issue was tackled, then the government bringing in a property tax that, you know, would be seen as part of what we should never have done, is got rid of property tax in 1977, and seen as part of normal government income and expenditure. But this is not a normal situation, so bringing in a property tax now does not solve the problem in terms of government revenue. It just adds to the problem by ensuring that people spend less money in the economy. They're afraid that their mortgages are going to go up, the tracker rates are going to go up. Then they're going to end up with a situation where we are going to ensure that the economy continues to spiral downwards. So from that point of view, I'd like to get the Minister's view on the issues of when can the revenue turn around, if the revenue can turn around, and get somebody and say, well, actually your property was undervalued day one. As a valuer, I would find it very difficult to go out and actually put an accurate valuation on people's houses. There's three methods of valuation. You do it by comparison. There's very little moving, so therefore how do you compare properties, especially in rural Ireland, where properties can be uniquely different. And then you have the issue of a residual method, where you get the site value and the cost of building the houses. Well, we all know that you actually can buy a house now for less than it would cost you to build it. So
your time is almost.
Thank you, I'll wrap up now. And then the income method, and we all know that rents have fallen in many areas and would not go next or near even covering the mortgage or giving a return to any owner, given all the taxes and charges they have on board. So in reality, Minister, I suppose the ultimate issue is that it is the worst time possible to be bringing in a property tax. Bill Clinton told us we must solve our mortgage issue, and we have not done that as a nation, and until we do that, our economy will continue to contract. So bringing in this now, of all times, is the worst possible move. It is not going to solve any problems, it's just going to create more. Thank you.